Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rep Your Grape. I am your host, Arthur Barham. I am the creator of Merlot to Muscadine, media dedicated to North Carolina vineyards and wineries. And I am so excited to be joined by an exceptional panel of very knowledgeable people about North Carolina wines and North Carolina grapes. So before I introduce them to you, I would just like to again welcome you. I assure you your time here will be well spent. You will learn a lot about the grapes grown here in the Tar Heel State, and you will also be privy to learning about some vineyards that are very, very skilled at turning these grapes into exceptional wines. So without further ado, what I would like to do now is call on my good friend, Matt Kimberling, to talk to us just a few minutes about the occasion that brings us here together. And that, of course, is NC Grape Month. So Matt, if you would take it away.
Perfect. Arthur, thank you very much for having us. This is a really exciting evening. So this year is actually the very first year that North Carolina has split out NC Grape Month from NC Wine Month. So up until last year, NC Grape Month and NC Wine Month were actually together as North Carolina Wine and Grape Month. And we actually celebrated it during the month of September. A lot of that was really busy time during the harvest. A lot of vineyards and winemakers couldn't actually be out there celebrating or promoting as much as they really wanted to. So the decision was made to really split out the two from each other. So as such, Wine Month we're now celebrating in May, but Grape Month we're actually celebrating in August. And that gives us a little bit of time before the grapes really ripen and come into harvest. Although, John, as you can probably mention, you're probably harvesting some grapes now. A lot of people throughout the state definitely are. So it's really a great time of the year to celebrate the North Carolina grape itself. And not only just wine grapes, but also the thriving fresh market grapes that we have here with muscadines and other hybrid varietals.
Thank you, Matt, for elaborating on that so eloquently. And thank you for touching on the fact that this is indeed harvest time. And that makes John Wright's presence here so very, very special. But before we get into a discussion of the grapes that bring us here together tonight, I would like each of you to take just a minute and introduce yourselves. And I'm going to start with my good friend, Natalie Hampton from Tar Heel Taps and Courts. Natalie, would you say hello to everybody and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Natalie Hampton. I'm with, as Arthur said, I'm with Tar Heel Taps and Courts, which is a blog about North Carolina beer and wine, and I'm located here in Raleigh, and I'm excited to talk about grapes tonight.
Thank you, Natalie. Next, I have sitting right beside you in my grid view, John Wright from Sanctuary Vineyards. And again, I am just tickled as I can be because a lot of vineyards and wineries that I reached out to were very busy with harvest and unable to join us. But I am especially glad to have John on board because John did an incredible series on Instagram called Grape of the Month all month long. And I learned so much that was part of the inspiration for us getting together tonight. So John, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm John Wright with Sanctuary Vineyards. We're in Jarvisburg in Currituck County. It's the most northeast county in the state, and we have 28 acres of vineyards. All of them are vinifera or European varietals, and they're grown in a marine climate, a maritime climate. So it's a different environment than you'll find in the Yadkin Valley. And we're pushing forward, trying to experiment with new grapes. And we are indeed in the middle of harvest right now.
Thank you, John. Again, I really appreciate you being with us. I'm just going to keep moving from left to right. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce someone who I always call my first wine friend, because he and I go all the way back to a bloggers convention a couple of years ago, where you may not believe this, but I was actually a little tongue-tied and didn't know anybody. And who should come up to me and strike up a conversation but my good friend Dave Nershi from Venosphere. Dave, say hello to everyone.
Thank you, Arthur, for that very nice introduction. And yes, that is one of the few times that I've heard you be at a loss for words, because that's certainly not usually the case. But I'm Dave Nershi. I'm the publisher of Venosphere, which is a blog that focuses on wine, food, and travel. And so I've been publishing it for about 10 years, and we've had more than 1.2 million visitors to the site. So it's been very rewarding and enjoyable to do that. So I'm a certified specialist of wine and enjoy traveling to different wineries and tasting different wines. And now I have to do it virtually, like everybody else. So I'm enjoying the opportunity to get together tonight and have this discussion.
Thank you, Dave. And I assure you it would not be the same without you. Now we have saved what many would consider to be the best for last, because as I alluded to, I met Dave and Natalie at a bloggers convention a couple of years ago. But wouldn't you know it, somebody had to orchestrate it, somebody had to execute it, and that would be my good friends Joe and Matt, also known as the NC Wine Guys. Now, your eyes are not deceiving you. You're only seeing one of them right now, but Joe will be joining us, I hope, very soon. So Matt, would you go ahead and say hello to everybody?
Absolutely, Arthur. Thank you again. So my name is Matt Kemberling. My other half, Joe Brock. We both make up the North Carolina Wine Guys. We started out as a blog about 6 years ago to really kind of go out and visit all the wineries in the state. But then we kind of quickly shifted our approach to really focus on emphasizing the brand of North Carolina wine and promoting all that North Carolina has to offer. And as you alluded to, Joe will be here in just a few minutes. He was running late from another appointment, but he'll be entering the door and popping in through the virtual background before you know it.
And that's when the fun will start, because one thing I love about him is he's like me. He's a native North Carolinian, and he has a very, very unique personality, and I love him to death. So guys, thank you all for joining me tonight. Without further ado, we are going to do what we came here to do, and that's talk about North Carolina grapes and the wines produced from them. So I'm going to start this discussion with my good friend Natalie from Tar Heel Taps and Courts. I believe she has an exquisite bottle from Morgan Ridge over there. So I'm going to give the floor to Natalie and let her tell what she has.
Sure. Thanks again, Arthur, for putting this together. When you first brought it up, I had several grapes in mind, but I immediately went to Sangiovese because I like Italian wines, but also we're seeing that particular grape show up more and more across North Carolina, and I was kind of intrigued, not just at the Italian vineyards, but vineyards across the Piedmont and even into the mountains. So this is my bottle of Duet. It's actually a blend of Sangiovese and Syrah, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about both types of grapes. Sangiovese is grown across North Carolina. As I mentioned, that you'll find it at both Italian wineries, and also other types of wineries are growing it now. It is a very much an Italian grape. 97% of the Sangiovese grapes grown in the world come from Italy, particularly the Tuscany region. And in the United States, we grow only about 2% then of the world's production of Sangiovese grapes. It is the sole grape in the Italian wine Brunello di Montalcino, and the primary grape of Chianti and Montepulciano. So Syrah actually is also becoming a popular grape in North Carolina, one, because consumers love the taste of it and because of its great blending potential. This wine, instead of being from Italy, actually comes from the Rhone region of France. And one thing interesting I found out about Syrah is that it's actually genetically the same grape as Shiraz, but the two make very different wines. And Shiraz was originally developed as a cultivar in Australia. In North Carolina, it's on our list of maybe grapes for growers because it requires considerable canopy and leaf management, which I take that to mean probably it has to be pruned a lot. This is a really delightful wine. I'm getting on the nose minerality for sure. It's I would say fruit forward and certainly some earthiness as well, and I would recommend it. It's, Sangiovese, as I mentioned before, is a grape that blends well both in Italy and here in North Carolina. So here's another great example.
Thank you, Natalie. And I think having John on the panel, he can elaborate more on what you were talking about as far as management of trellises and hedges and stuff like that. Is that right, John?
Sure. I've grown both of those grapes. I planted Sangiovese in 2003. It was one of the first grapes we planted. It's a difficult grape to grow, and it's temperamental even in Italy. So it doesn't not always translate well, enjoying Sangiovese in Italy and then trying to grow it in North Carolina. It does not always work. The folks that do Sangiovese well are typically growing it on a site where it gets good exposure to the sun. They've chosen a rootstock and a clone that is perfect for their environment. And that's what I've seen from the best Sangioveses in North Carolina. There also are in vineyards where the growers take care to trellis it properly. It's going to have to be hedged a lot, and they're going to need to pull the leaves away from the fruit to keep it from rotting. All of that is necessary to make even just average Sangiovese. So it's going to take a really good site. We pulled ours up because we planted it with the wrong rootstock. And if you do that, you really can't change the quality of the wine. You just have to tear it out and try again. We grow Syrah still, and it's another difficult grape. I mean, no grapes are going to be easy to grow in North Carolina with the exception of Muscadine. If you want to grow European grapes, it's going to take 110% effort just to make a decent wine.
Thank you, John. That insight is so critical to this discussion because bloggers, okay, maybe the NC wine guys, they know that, but that was totally informative to me. And speaking of NC wine guys, I see we now have the other 50% of the NC wine guys. Joe, say hello to everybody.
Hi all. Sorry I was late.
Hey, Joe.
Oh, Joe, you're
everyone.
never late. You're never late when you come in. And I also am very glad to see Matt McFadden from NC Sip and See. I was very privileged to share a discussion with him. I believe it was hosted by the NC Wine guys, and I extended an invitation to Matt and his wife Laura, and they graciously accepted. So Matt, welcome and say hello to everybody.
Thanks for the invite. I'm Matt McFadden. My wife Laura can't make it tonight, but I'm going to represent both of us and try to represent well. I'm here in Kannapolis, and we travel mostly the western part of the state, but we try to do as much as possible. We don't just write about wine. We write about food and beer as well. And wine, we're very much self-taught when it comes to wine. So I'm interested in learning it tonight and any opportunity I get more about the process, the terminology, and things like that. So I'm looking for some great insight from you guys tonight.
Well, Matt, it's a pleasure to have you on board. And guys, I don't know if you noticed, but Matt, I think, still has his shirt on from school. He and I are both school teachers, and we had a really, really robust discussion on Instagram chat. So Matt, welcome. We're very, very glad to have you.
Thank
And
you for the-
Natalie, I just want to thank you again for highlighting that wonderful vintage from Morgan Ridge. I was sharing a story with Natalie. If you have ever been to Morgan Ridge and you look up the hill, you see this beautiful house, and many people are aware that is where the owners live. But what a lot of people don't realize is she designed it and he built it. And when I heard that, I was floored because that home is magnificent. So Natalie, thank you again for joining us tonight, guys. Everyone, Natalie has another appointment later on, so don't be surprised if she just very quietly excuses herself. So moving right along, I'm gonna go now to John Wright with Sanctuary. And John, I believe you have one of my favorite wines to feature. And truth be told, it was National Albarino Day that got me hooked. And I was looking for one, and lo and behold, who provided it to me but my good friend Jeremy at the Wisdom Table in Elkin. And not only did he give me yours, but he gave me another one from Surrey Cellars. So John, if you would you elaborate on what you call so eloquently at Sanctuary, the Pearl?
Sure. I've got a bottle here. So this is our Pearl Albarino. And I'm not drinking wine tonight because I'm not even really off the clock. We're still working in the vineyard, trying to keep birds out. So we run out into the vineyard even at the end of the night to scare the birds away. So I'm not drinking. I've got to get right back to work after this. So I'm going to talk about this one, and maybe I'm going to squeeze another one in if I have time. Does that sound good?
Yes, and as a
Okay.
matter of fact, you can go from one right into the other one, and then we'll let you go.
Cool. All right. So the Pearl is the proprietary name we have for Albarino. Albarino is one of the finer grapes of Spain. When you think of Spain, you probably are thinking of Tempranillo. For Rioja, you're probably also thinking of Garnacha. But when it comes to the northwest of Spain, the climate is radically different than it is in Rioja. And it is going to be more humid. It's going to have higher rainfall. There's a maritime influence there. And that was why we chose this grape. We were not the first people to plant it in the region. It had been planted in Northern Virginia on the Northern Neck. It was planted in Maryland prior to us planting it. There was a good track record of it working. So we did not pioneer this grape. That credit needs to go to some of the Virginia growers that had tried it first. But it was an easy fit for our site. It crops lightly. It does not deliver a large crop. So for growers that want to have 4 to 5 tons per acre of fruit, it's not going to work. Like Petit Manseng, it's going to be a light cropper. And so therefore, a lot of commercial vineyards are not interested in it. I wish more people would grow it, but again, it sends up such a small cluster. But that's part of its allure because that small cluster packs a lot of flavor. It has a lot of skin to juice ratio, meaning it's not a big grape, it's not a big berry, it's a small berry. So it delivers a lot more phenolics, which is the way we describe the portion of the grape that can be attributed to the skin and the seed. That's why Albarinos, ours in particular, has a somewhat bitter, astringent finish, which is part of the grape's characteristic. It can smell like peaches and apricots and citrus oil. So like when you peel a clementine or maybe like a lime, it's going to have that sort of high intensity citrus oil aroma. Otherwise, it's dry on the finish. We pick it at a time when we can still get good acidity, so we don't wait until it's completely raisined on the vine, and that way it has a freshness. It's good with seafood. And so this one's distributed all over the state by Freedom Beverage, and that's Albarino. I've got another wine that's ours that is called Dorian, and this one is brand new. It's not distributed. We're just releasing it in our area, but we're selling it through the website. This is a blend of Tannat and Petit Verdot. Is somebody else talking about Tannat later?
Some of the people have it as in a blend, but no, unless Matt is going to talk about it, no, nobody else is talking about
But
tonight.
I'm talking about Petit Verdot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just a blend of the Tannat and Petit Verdot. And the reason we put these two together is because they're both fiercely tannic. So in North Carolina, you have a tendency to see wines that can be mild, low tannins, often don't have very dark color. And so they present almost like a dark rosé wine. And there's nothing wrong with that, particularly in milder wines. You might like that, but we often want to present a wine that's going to have lots of flavor intensity, is going to go well at the dinner table, and just has the look and feel and body of a full-bodied red wine. And that's when Tannat and Petit Verdot come in. To speak to Tannat, it's a French grape, native to the southwest of France, and southwest of France is a humid area. It gets more rainfall than other parts of France, other wine growing regions. And so the grapes that grow there tend to have really thick skins and be adapted to that climate. Petit Manseng is another one. So for us, we grow Tannat, we grow Petit Verdot. They tend to be mid to late season grapes. In this case, in 2019, we had a hurricane that hit us directly, and that was called Dorian, and it arrived on September 6th. So we put the fruit in here. We picked it on September 5th. So we picked it as the storm moved in. And then it reached the winery that evening, and then we lost power. So we made this wine with a generator. It is a wine that is young. We released it young, but the reason for that is we wanted it to have a spirit that we felt was embodied by the storm. It was a really fierce storm. It was one of the more powerful ones we've had at our vineyard. And the fruit that we left on the vine was destroyed by the hurricane. We couldn't pick it all in time. But to respect and honor the storm and its impact, we donated a portion of the proceeds to the Ocracoke Interfaith Relief and Recovery Team. And we went ahead and made that donation last month from this wine. So when you purchase this wine and try this, you're seeing relief go directly to Ocracoke Island. But with Tannat and Petit Verdot, they're both heavy, bold reds, so it's going to deliver deep, dark color right in the glass. The nose is going to be fig. It's going to be leather, cigar box. It is not a subtle wine. And because we didn't age it the extra year like we usually do, the tannins are apparent and they're bracing. So we could see this wine maybe being one that you lay down for a year or two. And the Dorian is brand new, so it's going to be around for a while. And I recommend trying that. And any Tannat or Petit Verdot you can get your hands on, because it's one of the easier grapes to grow. I keep talking about grapes that are easy to grow, not hard to grow. And I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to drop a ringer in here, which is the Vermentino from Piccione, which I love this wine. It reminds me of the freshness of Albarino, and it also bridges the gap to other sort of funky varietals like Gruner Veltliner and Arcats-Satelli. Albarino, Vermentino, Gruner Veltliner, Arcats-Satelli are four alternative varietals that should be planted more often for growers that are getting tired of growing Chardonnay and Pinot Gris. They should try one of those four varietals for probably more uniform success in the vineyard.
John, that was incredible, and I feel so sorry for you guys that have to come after John. That's like going on stage after James Brown. Okay, you know, I must tell you, John, I had two thoughts. Number one, I hope you have a lot of this stuff, because the way you describe it and the story behind it, it makes me want to jump in the car and drive 4.5 hours to get to you. And I'm closer to you than Joe and Matt and Dave and I. We are about the same distance. And I love when you said get some and sit on it, because that's what I do to enhance the flavor of a lot of my wines. So, John, I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. Your expertise and your input is like nobody else on this panel. I'm going to give you the opportunity to peace out whenever you feel like it. But because you reference Petit Verdot so much, that is an excellent segue into my good friend Dave Nurse's wine, because he has a Petit Verdot from Round Peak. So Dave, would you take the floor?
All right, thank you for that introduction. Yes, I've got a 2016 Petit Verdot from Round Peak. So Petit Verdot is a Bordeaux variety, so it's a French grape. It's one of the 6 traditional Bordeaux varieties that are allowed to be made into Bordeaux reds, including Cabernet Sauvignon, Cab Franc, Merlot, Malbec, and Carmenere. And so typically they only use a very small percentage in blending of it. But one wine enthusiast said, it's sort of like the pepper on your steak. It only takes a little bit of it, but it makes all the difference. So it has good tannins. It's a very dark wine, so it adds color when you're making a blend. And so for that reason, it's used a lot in blends. The name itself means little green one. That's the name of it. And as John was mentioning earlier, it tends to ripen later in the growing season. But in France, they've started moving towards using the Petit Verdot more in the blends. So it's rising up. But the reason why I picked Petit Verdot really was based on a trip I took a number of years ago to Virginia, going to different wineries, and I visited one called Flying Fox. I had a lot of Petit Verdot just in blends, but Flying Fox in Loudoun County, they just had a wonderful single varietal Petit Verdot that really blew my socks off. And so after that, I really was all in on Petit Verdot. It's a great grape. For the wine in my glass right now, it's got some nice fruit notes, a little bit of floral on the palate. There's a nice tart cherry flavor to it, medium body. And as it's been opening up in the glass, it's really getting much better. So I'm enjoying it. A lot of good acidity, which means it's lively on the tongue as well. So this is a relatively new grape in North Carolina. It was introduced in 2001, 2002, and a number of vineyards such as Shelton and Childress, Raylan, and Shadow Springs also introduced it at that time. More are now producing it now. But Shadow Springs also has a really wonderful Petit Verdot that I've had, and it was just another amazing. That was one of the best bottles, I think, that I've had from that winery. It's really delicious. I've also had some other good ones in Colorado. There's a winery called Creekside Cellars in the Palisades area. In Walla Walla, Seven Hills, which is a very well-known winery, has a great Petit Verdot. And this winery has been bought out since I tasted their Petit Verdot, but Moon Mountain Vineyards is a great winery. And in fact, now they have an AVA called Moon Mountain. But it's a delicious grape. You know, it's something that apparently does well in North Carolina. They found that in the warmer climates, the grape thrives better than in some of the colder areas where it's really ripening much later. So I'm looking to see if I have everything on my checklist here. So I think that's it, but a wonderful wine. This is a very affordable bottle too, just $15 from Round Peak, and very delicious. So this is one where you can buy a case for entertaining or to see you through the pandemic. So that is my update on Petit Verdot.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. I have been to Round Peak. They have exceptional wines. So Dave, thank you again for that wonderful summary of the Petit Verdot from Round Peak. I'm now going to ask the NC Wine guys to tell me what is in their glass. I believe they have a Cabernet Franc from one of my favorite Elkin Valley wineries.
That's right, Arthur. I don't think you can see it well with our virtual background. Matt's probably going to do a better job of holding it than I did. So we've got the 2015 Cabernet Franc from Jones Von Drell. It's estate grown, 40 months in French oak. So I think this was only released within the last year or two. It's one of their signature varietals. They also grow Petit Verdot and Petit Manseng as their signature varietal, but we chose Cabernet Franc from Jones Von Drell. Jones Von Drell is one of the top producers in the state. Their most widely known variety is Petit Manseng, but they do a great job with Cabernet Franc. This particular Cabernet Franc was spent 40 months in French oak, and we chose Cabernet Franc because of a recent discussion we had with Dr. Sarah Spade and Dr. Mark Hoffman of NC State, and talking about varieties that seem to work well in North Carolina. Cabernet Franc was one of the varieties that they mentioned, along with Petit Manseng, Petit Verdot, and Tannat. Of course, the native grapes and hybrids were other options, but for vinifera, those were the primary ones they discussed. Cabernet Franc is also the wine I think of when I think of having wine with North Carolina barbecue. It's going to be Eastern or West or Lexington style. I will say that our favorite is Lexington style. I grew up in Western North Carolina, so Lexington style is my favorite, and Matt's been converted since he's moved down. I will tell you that my favorite barbecue place is not in Lexington, though, but that's another story. But they still do Lexington style barbecue. But anyway, Cabernet Franc, Matt's going to tell us a little bit about it, but it is one of the noble grapes of Bordeaux. Of course, one of the parents of Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's an important place in kind of the wine world, and we think it finds a good home in North Carolina, as well as most of the middle and up all the way into New York State. In the Finger Lakes, we get some good Cabernet Franc there as well. We find that Cabernet Franc makes a great red wine, but it can also make a great rosé. And it's great, of course, for blending with other varieties, particularly those other Bordeaux varieties. So Matt's going to give us some rundown of the grape itself and some facts about it.
Yeah, so as Joe mentioned, it is one of the parent grapes of Cabernet Sauvignon with Sauvignon Blanc. So it's one of those that you really don't think about. It is very popular in the Loire Valley. It's one of the primary red varietals in that region. Here in North Carolina, as Joe mentioned in our podcast, we interviewed Sarah and Mark, and they actually were talking about how it is a really good grape for North Carolina, and how Rayland Vineyards actually has one of the largest plantings here in the state. So they do actually make a really great Cabernet Franc. They make a rosé out of Cab Franc. And then they also, they do sell a lot of their Cab Franc to other vineyards, or other wineries rather, in the state. But the one that we have from Jones Von Drell is completely estate grown. So that was my top facts. Joe hit a lot of them.
Yeah, so, and other ones that we enjoy, Laurel Gray does a great job with Cabernet Franc, as well as Silver Fork, and Over Mountain as well, and Parker Benz. So plenty of options, but those are some of the ones that stick out. A lot of people blend it. Hanover Park occasionally does a single varietal called Three Francs. That's always fantastic as well. So it's a great variety for the state, and everyone should have a Cabernet Franc in their wine rack.
Yeah, and this particular one is light and fruity, nice, great raspberry notes, some cedar. You can tell really with the oak that it's been aged nicely. And as of 2015, that was a stellar year for the state as well.
Wow. You know, I tell anybody, if it's in your glass, it's got to be good. And I am so proud to say I actually have a label from Ray Lynn's Cabernet Franc behind me. So, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your attendance. You guys, I always say, inspire me. And again, I show you that what you do and make it so easy is very difficult, Okay. Now, Matt, I know you've been chomping at the bit. You're the last one to go. And Matt, I know a guy like you don't hold back, okay? So I don't want you to hold back now. And
Well,
I want you to
you know
tell
what?
everybody what's in your glass and
I've
what
gone a whole
drink
different
are you
direction.
representing.
Yeah. First, I want to apologize. I was not a good student. I did not read all the instructions, so I did not email you ahead of time, and for that I
That's fine.
apologize. But
We're all in. We can't wait to see what you're drinking.
But a lot of times, and I have to preface this completely, Laura and I are experienced bloggers. We are new, very new at this. And I certainly know less about wine than anyone in this group. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. But a lot of times when you talk to people about wine, and when people find out you've got an Instagram page or a blog or something that you meet, and they ask you, what do you like, and this, that, and the other, a lot of times one of us will mention the wine that I'm going to talk about tonight, and it's a sweet wine. And they say, oh, and there's a perception that sweet wines are simple, that sweet wine drinkers are not sophisticated wine drinkers. And I don't agree with that. I may be completely wrong, but I don't. But I tell you what, one of our favorite places to go is You Are a Vineyard. And tonight I've got their Red Velvet Noble. And it's not a sweet wine. It's a semi-sweet wine, but we really love it. I'm not sure what to pair it with, but I think it's an outstanding wine to sit and relax, enjoy friends, and enjoy conversation. I like cigars. Sometimes I'll pour a glass of the Red Velvet, and I'll sit on my front porch and enjoy a cigar in the evening when I've had a stressful day, and it brings me right down. But that's one of our favorite places to go. Raise hands if you've been to You Are a Vineyard. Okay, so most everyone. Okay, the atmosphere is fantastic. All of the folks that work that they're there at the tasting room are knowledgeable. They're friendly. They're welcoming. And like I said, Laura and I, we emphasize the experience of wine, and we're learning more and more about wine and different wines and different grapes and the different and all the terminology and such that goes with it. But I would say 5 years ago, we weren't wine drinkers at all, really. So we're learning about wine, and I appreciate all of what you guys have offered us. All of everyone in here, I think we've had some sort of conversation with, and all of the conversation that we've had has been wonderful. But if you get a chance, who's tried the Red Velvet? Raise your hands. Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'm the only one. Okay. But,
in the tasting room.
I'm sorry?
We tried it in the tasting room one time, I think.
Okay. We do like the Red Velvet. I think it's good this time of year when it's very warm outside. It's refreshing. It's light. But it's not a lot of places that we go, and we'll taste. Usually when we go to a vineyard, we will ask what their best wine is, because the person that's working the tasting room knows what's the best that you have, and whatever they recommend, we will at least try. And since we tried that we tried Noble at probably 10 or 12 other vineyards, and none of the others compare, in my opinion, to that. It's not a simple taste. It's a little complex. It has. I think it has it all. But and again, thank you guys for your insight. That's my takeaway tonight. As little as I have to offer, I'm certainly getting a whole lot in return, and I'm thankful that you guys are all willing to offer your insight so that I can learn more.
Well, thank you, Matt, and I'm assured now that you and I are cousins, because the last time I was at Uwari, I sat in the rocking chair in the front of the vineyard, in the front of the winery, and had a big glass, I want to say, of Chamberson. Okay.
Okay.
It is in
I've had theirs.
Albemarle, and Albemarle is not that far from Holly Springs. I have been negotiating with Joe Oliver, the Carolina wine traveler, and that is halfway between us. So I believe
Oh,
we are
okay.
going to meet there very soon. And Joe, I just wanted to say, I had to go back to you because this Thursday is my 32nd wedding anniversary. And the wife and I are leaving on Friday, and we are headed to Columbia. We're going to stay in Columbia, and we're going to go to Over Mountain, Parker Beans, Russian Chapel, Sawyer's something. We're going to hit them all. I'm going to blow Instagram up, okay? Now, guys, I'm sure you all want to know what is in my glass, right? And what's
Absolutely.
interesting is if you were watching me earlier, I was drinking white wine. And Joe, Matt, Dave, that is because of the Livy Estate from Cypress Bend. Now, guys, I'm going to confess, you don't even see the label on the bottle anymore. Because when you come to my house for a wine tasting, I pour water out of blue bottles between the tastings, okay? But guys, that Livy Estate, 100% Carlos, leaning toward the dry side.
It's
It made me
fantastic.
cry. It made me emotional because we all talked about why it is our state fruit and everything, but we all know there are vineyards, there are wineries that look down their nose on, okay? So that was what I was drinking initially. And then, believe it or not, I switched over to the Vermentino from Raffaldini, which John Wright from Sanctuary alluded to earlier. But guys, I got to tell you what's in my glass now. And Joe, Matt, I'm not breaking any new ground for you. I looked, you blogged about it earlier. I have the 2017 Dornfelder Holtbrocken from Elkin Creek. And I think Joe and Matt should be going, yeah, we know that one. Guys, I was in Elkin at the wisdom table under the tutelage of Jeremy, and he poured a little bit for me, and it blew my mind. It took me back to my childhood when I ate a plum called damsons, okay? It's got cherry, fruit, high tannins. It's an exceptional wine, and I'm going to be truthful. I don't know if it's estate grown or not, but guys, if you have not had this one, you need to put it on your bucket list. Joe, Matt, you have had it, haven't you?
So it's not estate grown, but it is all Yadkin Valley. The source is locally, possibly from the only grower of Dornfelder in the state. It's not a variety that you see very often outside of Germany. So I'm not exactly sure. I think it was almost happen chance that he came upon this grower that had it, and he decided to buy it initially, and has been buying since, and he does it quite well. I think the 15 might have been the first vintage.
Mm-hmm.
So to do that third, I guess. I believe there was a 16. Yeah, it's a very nice wine. Working
You know,
its way
guys,
into being
you got to admit, we have tasted more wines than the average person. Matt, you are here. You're saying, I love you guys. I'm learning. But Matt, you have traveled more wine paths than a lot of different people. And when we taste a grape that makes us go, whoa, It's something you remember. It's just like the first time I ever had Chamberson. I can tell you where, I can tell you when. It was that life-changing. And when I had this one, guys, Dave Nershi, my buddy, you are in luck because I'm going to save a little bit of this for you, and I'm going to come over to you. Dave lives like 2 miles from me, okay? So, Dave, I'm going to save a little bit of this for you. Joe and Matt, you already know how good it is. Matt McFadden, you got me wanting to go to your Wari and get another bottle. So, guys.
Oh, for sure. Their Merlot is really good also.
I really want to thank all of you for joining me tonight. My intention tonight was to try and do what Joe and Matt do. And as you can see, it's very difficult. But not only that, educate people about North Carolina grapes. Joe, you would be so proud of Matt. Before you came on, he gave us a dog and pony about North Carolina Grape Month, North Carolina Wine Month, why they are separated. Unfortunately, Whit Winslow could not be with us tonight, and in your absence, Matt hit the ball out of the park, and we were all on the bases. So kudos to both of you.
That was a baseball reference.
And guys, I got to say one more thing before I let you go. You know, COVID-19, Corona, whatever you want to, it has been devastating to all of us. What I am so proud of is that we supported and nurtured this industry through some really tough times. And I was elated when Whit Winslow got on with us and said, guess what, guys? Vineyards and wineries and meaderies and tasting rooms are going to open. And I'm going, yay, yay! And then I don't even own one. But that's how I have a vested interest in them. Joe, Matt, I love to hear your story because I started out just like you, just trouncing around from vineyard to winery and fell in love and decided I want to promote them and I'll do whatever it takes to perpetuate their business. So guys, I can't thank you enough. I assure you, I extended some invitations, and Pam Riley and Wine Carolinas, they had conflicts, okay? But some people just ignored me. So trust me when I tell you 2 things. Number 1, you know, anybody that collaborates with me gets a gift. Okay? Number 2, you guys collectively inspire me. I steal from each of you and try and incorporate it into Merlot to Muscadine. And there is no doubt in my mind that by the time we are done, North Carolina wine will be right up there with Sonoma, Napa, Finger Lakes, and as my buddy Dave Nershi taught me to pronounce, Willamette, rhymes with damn it, okay? So guys, I'll give it to you. If you want to say anything in closing, I'm done.
Well, thanks for getting us all together and allowing folks to rep their grape. And it's been fun.
Thank you,
Great
Joe.
experience. Thank you, Arthur, for hosting in your congenial way. It's been great. And I've learned a few things, and it's great feeling everyone's enthusiasm for North Carolina wine, North Carolina grapes, and the great wineries that are in our state.
Take us out, Matt.
Yeah, I want to echo that. It was an awesome experience. I learned every time I go to a vineyard or every time I do anything like this, I learn so much. And I hope to continue to learn all the time. And I appreciate what you guys do. Arthur, thank you for putting this together. It was fantastic. I haven't had any yet, my son and I have been making and bottling beer all day since I got out of work. So I'm going to wait and I'm going to drink this red velvet tomorrow afternoon. But thank you again for inviting us. Joe, Matt, thank you for sharing with us. And it's been a great experience. And definitely any of you that are doing anything like this, send us an invite because we really enjoyed this.
Guys, thank you all for your time, and I greatly appreciate it. And again, the gifts will be coming soon. I just don't know what they will be. They may be jewelry, they may be money. I mean, who knows? I may send
Money's good. Money's good.
I may call Jay Raffaldini and say, look, I need 7 cases of Aguri free. Jay will go, nah,
Good luck with
I
that.
don't think so. Guys, have a good evening, and I will be in touch with you soon.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yes, sir.